Good morning. Happy Friday. It is, what is today? January 10th. We are on day 8 of reading the New Testament in a year. Oh my gosh, my little thing is like super crooked. Um, we are on Matthew chapter 8, and it is snowing here in Nashville. So let me show you. The snow is starting to come down. It's chilly. Which is quite the opposite of what's happening in the other parts of our country. And I was just thinking about um, how, because whenever you watch this, if you don't watch this in real time, this is when there are the Malibu fires or is it the Pacific Palisades? But basically, LA is burning. um, and people are losing their homes, and it's just mass devastation. And I think about the timing of how we're literally reading and learning about how the Lord comforts us in the fact that um, life is not about our possessions. And even though it is incredibly hard to lose our possessions, um, that there is so much more to life. And these are the moments when that becomes significant. When you realize, wait, it's not about um, the riches that I've stored up here, because again, they can perish in a moment. Me and my friend were talking about, and my stepdad's a builder, but how it takes so long to build something, and it can be demolished, be destroyed in hours, right? It can take years to build something, and then it just gets destroyed in hours. Um, but that people, now again, not to say that it's not heartbreaking, and that their livelihood, and that they are displaced, and that they are having to face difficulties. But it doesn't mean the Lord's not going to get them through it. It doesn't mean they're not going to be provided for. It just might be in a different way. It might be that instead of a 5-bedroom house, you have a 2-bedroom apartment for a little while, but it's a roof over your head, and um, starts to bring back the perspective of gratitude. And again, just like I said, we've been reading how um, life is not about our material possessions, because they come and go, and they are unreliable. So when you put your value and your identity and your worth and what you prioritize in the wealth of this world, that is where there is disappointment, and that is where there is anger and frustration, because your world comes crumbling down. That's why when you put your faith in the Lord, and you know that you will have enough, and even if it's just a place to rest your head tonight, um, and just changing the perspective. But then there honestly isn't disappointment, because you um, are grateful for the breath in your lungs, and you know that there might be unconventional ways that He provides. But I think about how even mankind, before we became civilized, all we had was the earth. And so now we look at that and we call someone homeless. But at the beginning, and Jesus was also homeless, but that from the beginning, all we had was the food around us, and the, I guess, greenery. And we started building, and we started to create society. But to not let that make us think that that is what we need to survive. So, anyway, just that our hearts go out to those people, not so much for losing their possessions, but what their heart is going through. Because in their heart, their soul, their mind um, can be in angst. I mean, those that have the Lord, I'm sure, are not in angst, right? They are realizing that they are in a season of transition, and that, just like Job says, the Lord gives and takes away, that they've lost some things. And that doesn't mean that there's not new things for them, and that this is just what stimulated change. But for those that don't know the Lord, that are in distress, are in fear, and how this is really going to challenge their psyche, their mental health, their stability. And so just praying that it brings them to the Lord, so that He can heal their perspective, and help build something new with them. Literally what we were talking about yesterday, building your house on rock, and just that they build a new life with Him, so that they can endure these kind of storms. So, anyway, with that, let's pray because we're going to read today too. The other thing, I was listening to a song this morning talking about how He keeps hope alive. And I just mentioned this because I think the two things that people get upset with God is nature and sickness, right? Because those are two things that's how they see God, because it's out of our control. And it's like, well, why did He let that happen? Or, even thinking, why did He do it? And it's like, we have to understand that, we made the electrical wires that sparked and started the fire. And we, as in the government of California, made the decisions to cut everybody's home insurance or fire insurance on their homes a few months ago. And they decided to deplete the water that was going to fire hydrants. That's man that made those decisions. So, it's like the ripple effect of all of those things. And then just when our thought is that it should be stopped, it shouldn't be happening, rather than realizing we live in a world that's going to perish, going to be destroyed. Um, so it's not about those things not happening. It's about us knowing that on the other side of all of our loss and ultimately our death, that there is life. And that is the hope that Jesus brings. He's the only one that brings us that hope. But realizing in this life that mankind is going to cause trouble and harm. And even if it's unintentional, but that there's still just going to be consequences for the things that we do. And to know that God can comfort us in it. And again, if anything, we just hold on to hope that this is not the end. Okay, so with that, I'm going to pray. Lord, we just thank you for your word, God, and how you reveal your nature to us. And you let us know that you have a plan, and let us know that you are good, and that you give us hope to hold on to, so that in times of distress and fear, when things are absolutely out of our control, and even when we question why, that we know what you have said is true. We know that this is all going to end on this side of heaven, and that it's causing us to love each other, to grow, to be humbled, to not rely on our possessions, to be humbled and realize that we're not in control, and to cry out to you for help, and to ask you to intervene, and to ask for your hand, and to build that relationship with you and trust you, and also the things that you take away, that we don't become so consumed with the things you've given us. We also understand and are okay with the things that you take away, because all we need is you. You are the hand that will continue to provide. And so, again, I just pray for those who are hurting right now, who need healing, because you are a healer and you can heal them, and just that they are provided for by the hands and feet of others, as we learn that you use us to help people in these situations, that they can see you and bear witness to you and your goodness as we shine our light, as we help them and give them provision and have generosity on our heart, that helps them get through these days, this season, and just that you build a new life with them, that they turn to you, and that whatever change this is causing, whatever disrupt this is causing, that it is for their good, and just that it helps them see the value of life, see what's really important in this life. And so, just as we read your word today, Lord, speak to us, help build our confidence in you, so that we trust you, and just know more and more of who you are, and that you answer the questions that we bring to you, Lord. And even if it's just frustration and a broken heart, you say that you heal the brokenhearted. And so let us bring our broken hearts to you, Lord, knowing that you are a safe place for us to hash it out. You do not run from our anger. You do not run from our mess, but you work through it with us. And so we just thank you for that, your patience with us, your grace, Lord. How today is a new day full of mercy. And so just thank you for forgiving us. And we forgive those who have hurt us. In Jesus' name, amen. Okay. So, Matthew 8. Like I said, we talked about nature and disaster and how this world, it says in Romans 8, how, the world is groaning and is crying out because like the world is dying. You think about us not liking that we die, but it's like the world creation is chaotic and, is trapped in this curse as well. And so it, just around us, just being disruptive, and how the Lord says that there will be a new heaven and a new earth, right? That there's new creation. But that because that's so out of our control, and then the other is sickness, that people think, why, is there sickness? And so we're going to talk about that today. So Jesus heals a man with leprosy. When Jesus came down from the mountainside, large crowds followed him. A man with leprosy came and knelt before him and said, Lord, if you are willing, you can make me clean. Jesus reached out his hand and touched the man. I am willing, he said. Be clean. Immediately he was cleansed of his leprosy. Then Jesus said to him, see that you don't tell anyone, but go show yourself to the priest and offer the gift Moses commanded as a testimony to them. Okay, so some things that stand out here are, first of all, the man's boldness to ask, right? He says, Lord, if you're willing. And he says, I know you can, right? I know you can, you're able, but it's just if you're willing, you can make me clean. And then how the Lord touches him, right? Doesn't say that Jesus made him clean and then Jesus touched him. Jesus touched him first while he was still dirty. And then it says he was clean, right? Be clean. And then Jesus also saying, don't tell anyone. Because we already know what's going to happen as soon as word gets out that Jesus can heal. Because again, right, there's so much sickness, there's so much leprosy that every single person is going to want to be healed. And this is going to start to help answer our questions of why doesn't he heal every single, cancer or every single miscarriage or every single right? Versus there being intentional ones and purposeful ones. Okay, the faith of the centurion. When Jesus had entered Capernaum, a centurion came to him, which is like a Roman soldier, asking for help. Lord, he said, my servant lies at home paralyzed, suffering terribly. Jesus said to him, shall I come and heal him? The centurion replied, Lord, I do not deserve to have you come under my roof, but just say the word and my servant will be healed. For I myself am a man under authority, with soldiers under me. I tell this one, go, and he goes, and that one, come, and he comes. I say to my servant, do this, and he does it. When Jesus heard this, he was amazed and said to those following him, truly I tell you, I have not found anyone in Israel with such great faith. I say to you that many will come from the east and the west, and will take their places at the feast with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of heaven. But the subjects of the kingdom will be thrown outside into the darkness, where there will be weeping and gnashing of teeth. Then Jesus said to the centurion, go, let it be done, just as you believed it would. And his servant was healed at that moment. Okay, wait, I want to reread this part where it said, you have faith. I say to you that many come from the east and west will sit at the table. The subjects of the kingdom. Let me actually look this up in the Greek. I want to know what the original says. So we're in 8:10. Okay. Matthew 8:10, Greek. He said, except no one so great a faith have I found in Israel. Many from the east and west will come and will recline with Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob in the kingdom of the heavens. However, the sons of the kingdom will be cast out. Okay, so that had said subjects. Interesting. I think it's because it's saying like the Jews consider themselves like more entitled, right? Like that they are the bloodline of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, so they're considering them the sons. Because right, he's saying many will come from the east and from the west, and they will recline with Abraham. But there will be sons that get cast out. Yeah, descendants. It's saying that the son is the descendant. Um, Hence, also why we, calling Jesus the Son of God. Sons of the kingdom will be cast out into the darkness. There'll be weeping and gnashing of teeth, which, right, is like a saying. And so think about like torment, just in the sense of like, this is what's so funny. Is when we hear torment, again, we go so extreme where we're like, I mean, I think it's probably just because of what religion has done and what pastors have done and the picture they've painted. But even think about how growth in general, or being humbled, or being embarrassed and swallowing your pride and having to apologize, all those things feel like torment, right? It like torments you inside when you know you're wrong and now you have to right a wrong, or when you're so jaded and you don't trust anyone and you push them away and you finally have to like let love in. Like it feels difficult, and it feels like it's just interesting because it's like a good pain. I even think going to the gym and you're doing stuff and it's like a good pain, but still painful nonetheless. And so for us to even picture that, like what would purifying feel like? Imagine like if we're gold going into the fire and being purified, would not feel comfortable. And so even if it's just that it's like that he's saying you're going to go through a process that is going to um like require all of you and really shed the things that you're holding on to, and that might feel painful to lose, but it's what's good for you. Hold on. Okay, gotta always check. So with this situation, he's talking to a Roman soldier, right? And so he's dealing with a Roman soldier, and this guy is saying like, I have authority. I know that I can make commands and people will do things, and I don't even have to be in the room. And he's saying, you have that authority. I believe that you can declare my servant healed and you don't even have to go be with him. Like you don't have to lay a hand on him. And so then Jesus is like looking at his own following and saying, see, you guys don't even get it like this. You guys don't believe this strongly. Like those that are Gentiles, those that are outside of the Jewish faith, when they're seeing the Son of God, they are believing for big things, right? They are believing beyond just like almost like a standard faith. And I don't know if it's because the Israelites like have their own, even though you'd think there was so many miracles here, if it's because like they have laid down this foundation, and so even still they put God in a box of like they believe he's the Son of God, but for some reason they're still limiting him to the possibilities. And how when others hear this news and it's like he's the Son of God, they are like, oh, so he can do anything, so he can do big things. And so how Jesus is like, I haven't found anyone that has this faith. But then he says, go and let it be done just as you have believed it would. And so this is why our belief is so important, because the Lord is saying it's to the standard of your belief and not your words, your actual belief, right? He's saying you actually believe I can do it. And so it's done to the standard of your belief. And so sometimes think about that. This is why, again, doubting is so bad and like trips up our miracles or our answered prayers, because it has to do with our level of belief. And so when the leper comes to him and says, I believe you can heal me of leprosy. I've never seen you do it before, but I believe you can do that if you're willing. And the Lord's like, okay, you're right, I can. And then the centurion's like, I believe you have the authority to command this sickness to go away. I've never seen it before, but that's what I believe. And so realizing when you have that level of faith in the Lord, like you're like, I'm just trying to encourage us to believe for big things and actually believe. Again, not just say it because it's the right thing to do or because like you ultimately want what is on the other side, even if you don't truly believe it can happen. It's like, no, the part that he's tying to it is you have to believe it can happen. You have to actually believe that God will do good things, that God can do anything, and that have that boldness and that confidence in him, right? That's what faith is our confidence. Okay, Jesus heals many. When Jesus came into Peter's house, he saw Peter's mother-in-law lying in bed with a fever. He touched her hand and the fever left her. He got up and began, or she got up and began to wait on him. When evening came, many who were demon possessed were brought to him, and he drove out the spirits with a word and healed all the sick. This was to fulfill what was spoken through the prophet Isaiah. He took up our infirmities and bore our diseases. So what we've heard now in 3 different instances is Jesus's relationship with sickness specifically, right? And it's different types of sickness, and just different situations. Right? I'm trying to think. There was leprosy. I don't think that the soldier says what his servant had, but this one says a fever. Um, and that she's healed, right? And so it's like Jesus is going in and building this foundation for people of his ability to heal. And I love that because we already talked about the, holistic nature of the gospel, but how the root of it really is healing. And whether it's healing our soul, right? So our broken heart, our mental health, renewing our mind, our rebellion, and our need to trust him and yield to him. So that being, mental health issues and our anxiety and depression, right? And all this stuff where we have identity issues and we feel like something's missing and we've got to go find it in the world and we've got to clean ourselves up before we can get to God and whatever, all the lies that we believe versus truth. So there's that needs to be healed, but also even the physical. Because if he can heal the mental, he can heal the physical. We already know that everything comes from the inside out. And so it's like, actually, when he's healing the mental and the spiritual, the physical will be evident too. But anyway, that it is a ministry of healing. That's just what I think is cool. Is like ultimately, if you want to simplify it, what I'm hearing is that Jesus heals. Jesus heals. But so it also says fulfills prophecy. There's a prophecy in Isaiah that he's going to take up our infirmities and he's going to bear our diseases. Remember, disease is just dis-ease. What does it say is the synonym for? Oh, it just references Isaiah 53:4. Let me see. This is verse 17. I want to see if there's like a different word. Haven't spoken the prophet. So our infirmities, what are infirmities? Our weaknesses, our sicknesses. It says our want of strength, illness, suffering, calamity, frailty. So that's interesting. So sickness, the way that we see it, is we think of things as like incurable or something. And again, because it's leading towards our death versus realizing that we're all going to die and that's happening. But what is a sickness actually? It is a weakness, a want of strength. It is our frailty, our calamity, our suffering. And it says, without strength. So that's what infirmity means. That's what our sickness is that we are without strength. We don't have the strength to get through. And right, the Lord gives us strength by his spirit. So strength is a spiritual thing. Strength is not a physical thing. It refers to an ailment that deprives someone of enjoying or accomplishing what they would like to do, focuses on the handicaps that go with the weakness. So it's saying, right, the symptoms kind of thing. It's like, it's depriving us and it causes handicaps, right? You can't do the things you want to do. So the handicaps that come with the weakness expresses the weakening influences of the illness, especially when someone becomes overly dependent, wrongly or overly dependent. Wow. So sickness is, you're in a place where you're kind of losing your individuality and you cannot do things and you're becoming dependent. That's interesting. So that's what infirmity means. And then, or disease. So disease is sickness or illness. Malady, M-A-L-A-D-Y. I don't know what that word means. This refers to, so in the Hebrew, negah, it says refers to a plague or affliction sometimes used in the context of testing. So interesting. I know that in Job it says like the Lord, like we've come close to death, but like the Lord can pull us out of it or something like that. Um, but just thinking about, and I've prayed this a lot in my family, because when my mom has had sickness, but how we just try to find courage in it and think, and not in a way of like, oh, this is a test, like the Lord's trying to see if I love him or something like that, but realizing that there can be purpose behind it. Maybe it's testing your faith, maybe, and not that God doesn't know, you're revealing to yourself, do you really trust him? Do you really have hope in life after death? Do you really, have your priorities in line and value every day of your life? Maybe again, it brings you back into a state of gratitude. You've gotten really just distracted and really unappreciative. And now it causes you to, cherish every day and live life to the fullest and not make life all about you because you realize it's fleeting. Like some of those things become aware, and God has always known you were going to get to the other side, right? You might have a sickness and you have it for 90 days, you have it for 6 months, or you have it for 3 years, whatever. And he knows you're going to get to the other side. And so even though you spend every moment of that, and you don't have to spend every moment of that, but I'm just like, for this example, that you could spend every moment of that questioning, doubting, fearing, like, is this ever going to end? Or like, oh my gosh, this sickness is going to end in death. And it was never going to end in death. It was always going to be a trial period of refining you, of also giving you a testimony of healing. You come out the other side and you say, God has been so good to me. Like I had a season where I felt like my life was on pause and I came out the other end and now I'm going to go like be running, and I can encourage other people that the Lord is a healer. And so just experiencing that for yourself. And so it's like we want to avoid the sickness and never have the sickness versus realizing that when we are sick is when we can experience God as the healer. Just like what we were talking about with blessed are the poor and the Sermon on the Mount. But so this is saying disease, and it's saying chronic or persisting disease, typically an incurable ailment. Okay. Continuing on, the cost of following Jesus. When Jesus saw the crowd around him, he gave orders to cross to the other side of the lake. Then a teacher of the law came to him and said, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. Jesus replied, Foxes have dens and birds have nests, but the Son of Man has no place to lay his head. Another disciple said to him, Lord, first let me go bury my father. But Jesus said to him, Follow me and let the dead bury their own dead. I love this. This is one of my favorite sections, but it's repeated in Luke, and that's like a huge foundation of my ministry and of my coaching. But this is where I keep saying that Jesus was homeless, because it says foxes have dens and birds have nests, but I have no place to lay my head. So trust that, or understand that when you follow me, because I think of this too, when people think, I'm going to follow Jesus and maybe I'll get everything I want. Jesus is saying, do you understand that like I am showing and proving that you don't even have to have things to your name? Now, what Jesus relies on a lot is the generosity of other people, right? He goes to a new town and someone opens up their home to him and they say, you can stay here for the night, or you can stay here until it's time for you to move to the next town. And then people are providing, the food that they have. Maybe there's merchants and they have some extra bread and they're like, you can have this bread or you can have this, resource. And it also just shows, because our hearts, when they're greedy, are so illogical. Because imagine, again, you haven't sold all your goods for the day. And what's the other option? To just throw it away? Like, why would you not give it to somebody? Or again, if you have an extra bed in your house, why would you not let someone stay? That we have this mindset of it's mine and putting walls up and just this, tough barrier to entry, versus realizing we do have things that we can share. Think about you're driving around in your car. You got 3 extra seats in there. You always could give someone a ride. You could give 3 people a ride. But how in our mind we think, no, I don't know, I'm not going that way. It's kind of out of my way. Or, oh, I got, stuff in my car, whatever it is. And it's like, dude, get the stuff out, put it in the trunk, whatever. But the whole point just being like him showing that you can survive without even having possessions to your name. And that's what he's doing. And again, yes, it requires a generosity of people, and there's a lot of rejection in there, but it also gives people the opportunity to give and to serve. And that's what he shows, is all the people that are used in these stories. that they had the opportunity to open up their home, to give, right? If it's better to give than to receive, it actually is a kindness to give someone the opportunity to give to you, right? To say, I need help, and let them be honorable, let them prove their character, let them do some kind of act of kindness. Um, and then saying the second part of that, let me go bury my father. And I love this because, again, just the reality of how in this life, the way we grieve and mourn, and the way that we even, um, with this kind of mindset, it's like you're holding on to the dead, right? Like, it's like if your father is gone, they're gone. Like, even to try to say, like, it's more important to handle that situation than it is to follow you, rather than realizing that, like, you're here now, you're alive, you have, transformation and things being accomplished through you, and you can be on mission. You need to go now, right? Like, you need to just move forward with the Lord versus I've got these things I need to take care of. And again, especially when it's something that it's like that person isn't receiving your help anymore. It's different if it was like, my father is sick, right? Maybe that would be a different thing is, my father is in his old age. I have the responsibility to help him, but then I'll come. That's not what this says. It says this person is gone. This person has passed away, but I still want to tend to their needs. And it's like they don't have any needs. They don't have any needs. Um, but how our mindset and the way that we hold on to those who have passed, and we still let it linger versus realizing, no, they've moved on, they're with the Lord, they've gone ahead, they are in better places, they are in glory right now. Their flesh, like, doesn't have any life in it anymore. And so it's just like we can hold on to their memory and we can hold on to the life and bring it with us, but we don't need to be letting it hinder us and weigh us down of how we are. um, I guess just not picking ourselves up and continuing on with life, when they are gone. Okay, Jesus calms the storm. Then he got into the boat and his disciples followed him. Suddenly, a furious storm came upon the lake, so that the waves swept over the boat. But Jesus was sleeping. The disciples went and woke him, saying, Lord, save us. We're going to drown. He replied, You of little faith, why are you so afraid? Then he got up and rebuked the wind and the waves, and it was completely calm. The men were amazed and asked, What kind of man is this? Even the winds and waves obey him. So even in their question, when they're saying, What kind of man is this? It's like, don't you know? I thought you were supposed to know this already. But like they're still shocked. The fact that it's like, oh, he's healed all these people. And it's like they want to believe he's the Messiah. They want to believe he's the Son of Man. But then when he does stuff, they're like, oh, wait, maybe he really is. Like, I didn't see that coming. I didn't expect that. Those are, you know, bigger things beyond our power, beyond our control, that are just really proving who he is, but how they're shocked. And he's just thinking, you little faith, like, don't you know? I thought you knew I'm the Son of God. Like, you've got to believe that. And then when I do things and show you what I'm capable of and what my authority is, that even if you've never seen it before, you're not surprised. Because again, Jesus is sleeping. And what I think is funny here is they have already declared the outcome, even though they're uncertain. And I think about, my friends that do this, right? Or just people, you witness this a lot. People will speak over a situation that isn't over yet. Like, they will speak the outcome, oh, this is going to end badly. It's not over yet. What are you talking? You don't know that it's going to end badly. And so that's just really frustrating when people take confidence in speaking negatively over something, of like, oh, this thing is going to happen. Like, this thing is going to fail. This, I'm not going to be healed. Like, you don't know yet. Like, time is passing. The story is still being written. And again, even in this, they're like, we're going to die. And Jesus knew the whole time. No, you're not. No, you're not. But why are you even speaking like that? Why are you saying we're going to drown? And so that's what fear does, is fear draws the conclusion that hasn't happened yet and was never going to happen. So it just caused them to be panicking in a boat when they didn't need to be panicking. They could have been sleeping. Now, none of this is to say that the Lord isn't still going to calm the storm. It's just more the way that you operate in the storm. Like, if you're in a storm that you're going to survive no matter what, you're going to survive it. and I'm talking metaphorically. It's just a matter of how the storm feels. And you have two options. You can either be the person that's sleeping through the storm, like when you're in a trial in your life, when things are getting hard, that you just trust, or you can be the person that is absolutely losing their mind, that is manic, that's like, this is the end of me, my life is over, I'm going to drown, I'm freaking out, I'm afraid. And all you're doing is causing yourself to be so anxious, so spinning, so just like not at peace basically during the entire like process or time. And so I think when you've done that enough, you get to where you can learn to not do that. I think about it's like I'm not calm in the storms necessarily now because I've always been calm in the storms. It's like because I've been chaotic in enough storms that when I got through them, I thought I caused stress that didn't need to be there. Like I just lived in a season where I was hard to be around. Even it sucked to be myself and to be in my own head. Um, I made that harder than it had to be. And I lost relationships, lost this and that along the way because of who I was becoming, how I was acting in that season, versus realizing I could have been at peace through it the whole time and just seen what the Lord had in store and trusted what He had in store. Because this is where control starts to come in. You don't trust what He has in store. And so you try to start changing the outcome and you try to control it and you try to make things go your way, versus when you're truly surrendered, you say, okay, Lord, like, I trust you. If this ship is supposed to sink, then let's see what happens. Like, then we'll go from there. And if we're supposed to swim to shore, or if, another boat's going to come rescue us, but you're more along for the ride, along for the journey. You're like, I'm not going to try to control the situation. I trust how this is going to go. Because that's a lot of the self-preservation is like, I don't want harm to come to me. I don't want, and not even just harm, I don't want any inconveniences to come to me. I don't want any trouble, any stretching, any growing. I don't want any of those things to come to me. And so we try to avoid it as much as possible, where the Lord takes us through those things, through them, in them, through them, and out the other side. And we're trying to find a way to just not have to deal with it at all. Okay, Jesus restores two demon-possessed men. When He arrived at the other side in the region of the Gadarenes, two demon-possessed men coming from the tombs met Him. They were so violent that no one could pass that way. "What do you want with us, Son of God?" they shouted. "Have you come here to torture us before the appointed time?" Dang, that feels like it'd be in like a movie. That's twisted. They're calling Him out, like they're calling Him Son of God, and they're saying, "Are you torturing us before the appointed time?" That is a demon talking. Some distance from them, a large herd of pigs was feeding. The demons begged Jesus, "If you drive us out, send us into the herd of pigs." He said to them, "Go." So they came out and went into the pigs, and the whole herd rushed down the steep bank into the lake and died in the water. Those tending the pigs ran off, went into the town, and reported all this, including what had happened to the demon-possessed men. Then the whole town went out to meet Jesus, and when they saw Him, they pleaded with Him to leave their region. Oh, it's so interesting. Okay. So, first of all, that they were violent. And I think about when I would say, struggling with demons, when you think about someone and you look at them and they are eating themselves up, right? It's almost like from the inside out, and they are just, I think about it, especially in mental health. Like, it's one thing when you just have your own anxieties, but it's another thing when it's like there's voices, or there is just like violence. Like, I just remember choosing violence, and you almost have this weird like detachment, disassociation. I don't know if it's like sadistic, what it is, but it's not normal, and it's not like empathetic at all. There's no connection, there's no love. It's like you almost think it's like fun, and again, it's like it's like twisted That's the best word I can say, and I know I just used that when I was talking about, like, a dark movie, but the way you're thinking is so out of touch and out of tune, um, and it just makes itself evident, and then it doesn't work. Like, you can't operate in society that way, you can't have any relationships that way. Like, you might think it's working because in certain you win the battles and lose the wars, basically. In certain battles, in certain moments, you seem like the one winning, but it causes everything around you to fail. And again, like, no one to trust you, no one to want to be around you. You are looking out for yourself. You are destroying everything you touch because you just don't see value in anything, whatever. But I think violence is an interesting word because it's like when you see violence specifically, why would someone be violent to someone else unless they are disassociated, unless they are out of touch? Because when you start to love others and when you're healed and when you understand the value of life, like, you can't be violent. And so that's a huge thing in our life because it's a question we have is, why are people evil? Why are people violent? And it's realizing, like, that person has something demonic going on. Like, they do not have the spirit of the Lord. They are not filled with love. And that's why, again, all we can do is pray and hope for that person. And I do think about deliverance, like casting out the demons and saying, like, get out of this person. There was this guy that had a great testimony where he said he went into a church and he was sitting there and he was just ready. Like, he was waiting for it to be over so he could just, you know, tell everyone how wrong they were. And he said in the middle of it, a woman started praying over him and he felt the most, like, toxic, like, twisting, like, almost like he was going to throw up. And it was like happening inside of him. And he said that, like, it felt like death. It felt like just this this dark pit, whatever. I'll find the video, but it's like, because the way he was describing it, he said there was all these voices in his head, and what used to be the voices that were like, these people are idiots and none of this is true, and they just don't even know, and they're all pathetic. The voices turned on him and they showed what their, like, true intent was and what their true, belief was, and it was like, you know basically die. Like, it was telling him that, it was like, die, die, like, kill yourself. Like, it started to turn into that language, and it made me think about unalive thoughts and how there's like a voice telling you to do that, because God would never tell you to do that, and even your own voice would never tell you to do that. But that it's them. Just like with this, they were like, send us to the pigs. Like, we don't want to be. I don't know where else he would send them, but how they were talking in this guy of saying, like, you don't need to be here anymore, like, you need to end it. And I don't know if it was because, again, like, they wanted to stay in him, and I don't know what that torment is like, or again, like, what is going on in the spiritual. I can't speak into that specifically, I'm not God. I can just speak into what it's like to be in it and what this person was saying. Just how these voices started to turn on him, and then he said he heard a voice that just, like, said his name, and it was different. It was like an authority. And he said, and all the other voices silenced. And that this voice just said, come. Like, it was like, again, like saying, like, come to me. And it was warm. And when he said, okay, and, like, started to trust that, like, it's like Jesus, right? Come to that voice, that the others went away. But it also wasn't just like they went away and it felt like, rainbows and butterflies. He said it was like the most sickening feeling inside of him to get rid of them. But then immediately when they were gone, it was like freedom, and it was like peace, and it was, like I said, warm, and it filled his body from his toes to his head. And he was just like, oh my gosh, like, but that's what they're trying to keep us from. But anyway, it's this toxin is what, honestly, what it makes me think about. Um, that you have to purge from. Almost think about, like, when people go through withdrawals or any kind of detoxing, and how it's like this purging, but it does not feel comfortable. But anyway, just like the demons showing their intent of actually being against this person. And even though they try to make you think they're for you and they're pushing the world away, and it's like, yeah, it's just you and us. As soon as the power started to turn against them, they turned against him, and they showed, actually, we're not for you, we're against you, and you should take yourself out. Like, you shouldn't be here. You're the, you're not wanted, you're not and all that. And that's why it's so important too to have community or to have people praying over you that are like, do not listen to those voices. They are wrong. And like cast them out. But anyway, so they were violent. They're speaking to the Lord, saying, calling him the Son of God, saying, they know that there's an appointed time for, everything to be handled, wickedness to be handled. And so even them just addressing that, it's just crazy that that statement is even in there. Have you come to torture us before our time? But how the town, their response wasn't that, oh my gosh, these people are now free and now they can come eat at our coffee shop, or they can come hang out at church with us, or they can get married and have families. They didn't like that these people were healed, because it's like, no, we enjoyed being able to hate those people and shame those people and keep them as outcasts. What do you mean that they're healed? And now we've got to what? Like welcome them back in. And then also thinking about how that person, lost their pigs, the farmers that lost their pigs, and how rather than, again, seeing the value of a life, of human life being more significant than just the food, or again, the like vocation, their career of farming, what they saw in it was, oh my gosh, I just lost my livelihood. I just lost our food again for the town, or I lost, like, I'm going to be in trouble or something like that, or whatever it is. But just that the negative thought of, oh my gosh, all the pigs ran off into the water, and seeing it as a negative, seeing what Jesus did as a negative, rather than seeing the beautiful miracle of the freedom that he offered those people that needed it. So anyway, okay, that's chapter 8. I'm going to post the discussion questions, and otherwise I will see you soon. Whatever day it is for you, I don't know, but if you're watching this on a Friday, happy Friday. I hope you have a great weekend. I hope that you're safe, and I will see you soon. Bye.